Hello and welcome to the second session on the fifth day already of the PSASA Midterm Convention. I have the pleasure of starting this session off with my talk, Self-Care Isn't Selfish, Becoming Healthier Happens by Choice, Not by Chance. So let me start with a question. Are you actively engaged in your health and well-being? Now, if you are, congratulations. If you're not alone. Now, self-care has been something that we hear more about in the last few years than we've ever done in the past. Let me first give you a little bit of background why I talk about self-care, apart from obviously about leadership and some of the other things I do. See, over the last 3 years, we have gone through some major global challenges which have adversely affected our health and well-being in one way or another, and I hope you can agree with that. See, already early on, I spoke up and I spoke my truth, which not too many people agreed with, at least not at the time, but that's okay. See, I had to speak up because sometimes it is better to speak up and get some flack for it than look back and look at the consequences of your silence and wish you had. Well, that was me. And after all, we're also in the Speakers Association, so speakers speak. Now, if you look at my motto, that might make a little bit more sense, because my motto is that I believe in a world where people are inspired to use their voice and speak rather than suffer in silence and lead. Now, I hope that hits home and now you understand a little bit better. But one thing that started to surprise me more and more, though, is that we hardly ever saw any information on our screens that would help us to take better care of ourselves. It didn't make any sense to me, and it's something that was so important to us and always has been. Now, and when it talk about to take care of ourselves is to take care of the one person we are ultimately responsible for, and that is the one looking back in the mirror. So there is an African proverb that says, when there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do no harm. But we first need to find and fight that enemy within so we become calmer. And that is a job all by itself. And then there is a rabbi, I heard a comment by him one time, and this rabbi said, do something today because, hey, if you don't do anything today, what do you need tomorrow for? I thought it was funny, but it made a lot of sense to me. But for me, I've been a martial artist since I was 17 years old. I like to swim. I like to go for walks. I am heavily into personal development, mind power, all those kind of things. So I kind of love those kind of things already. So I had a head start on many people. But I actually started to question myself, what can I do to make a difference, rather than when I was speaking my truth, rather than maybe out to the confusion. And I didn't speak my truth to be right. I spoke my truth to bring another perception to the plot so we can make an informed decision. That's all. But for me, it was, how can I make a difference? And then not can I make a difference, but how can I? And that's the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset. And that's for another day altogether. But I started to do Facebook Lives on self-care, and I thought maybe I'll do 5 one week and maybe a few more next week. But I did 44 talks on different subjects in that whole area of self-care. And since then also I followed it up with 52 talks about different values in my values-based leadership program. But I really started to write down things on self-care, and I created an ebook, also a video series with a workbook. All of this, luckily, is going to be launched early next week as well. So I'm excited about that. But I'm doing this hopefully not for that to people to watch it and listen to it and see it and read it and then put it on the shelf, shelf development. But that this will be a catalyst for you to inspire you to start doing something today. And because really, action always cures procrastination, because how often will we say, well, we're going to take care of ourselves soon, and we're all busy, speakers as well, we're all busy entrepreneurs doing all kinds of stuff, and then self-care ends up on the back burner or gets forgotten about all of it all the time until it might be too late. But that's why I started this. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight why. But in this, I also mentioned some areas of illness and discomfort because that's what happens when we neglect our self-care. But I avoid that as much as possible because rather than spend too much time on the cure after the health scare, I would rather talk about any solution, any way that we can prevent this. We always heard about, prevention is better than the cure. And that's what we work on. And if you were with us yesterday, then Alison Faraday actually really gave a very touching and powerful, even inspiring insight in why self-care is so important. And I can already tell you that she will never neglect her self-care again after the big scare she had. But I really prefer to focus on what we can do and what we should do, what we do have control over. And I hope that makes sense for you as well. And if it makes sense for you, just put a 1 in the chat box because I would like you to participate. There's a wonderful saying there, what happens around you or what happens to you is not half as important as what happens within you. Now, with all the challenges around the world creating way too much anxiety, depression and fear, it is so easy to get completely bogged down with all the negativity that is streaming into our living rooms from our governments, our mainstream media and our social media through all the many electronic gadgets that we now possess. Now, if you're a little bit older like myself with a few gray hairs, and I know there's some of you in the audience today, we used to be able to walk out of our living room away from our TVs, our radios, even our telephones, which many of them are hanging in the wall on a cord, but we would no longer be bombarded with all that consistent negative news. Now, unless, of course, there was people around us who used to constantly bring it up. And I'm going to briefly talk into that just now. But now, where we are now, with all the modern gadgets and things like that, there is no hiding place. I was bullied as a kid and I could hide away, but now we talk about cyberbullying and bullycide. Now these are terrible terms that are used now to describe the horrendous things that happen in bullying all by itself. But we can't escape from it anymore. And about those negative people I talked about, those who always complain and blame storm, blame everybody else, the cat, the dog, the neighbor, the boss, the government. There was an amazing gentleman called Charlie Tremendous Jones. And he wrote the book, Life is Tremendous. As you might guess, everything to him is tremendous. But he said there's 3 things, and it always stuck with me. I met him twice. Beautiful guy. He's since passed away. But these 3 things really stood out for me. He says there's 3 things that have a huge influence on the rest of your life. The things you hear, the things you read, and the people you associate with. You might go, there's a possibility that I might have to work on one of those areas. Maybe you need to work on all 3. And people say, but the people you associate with, but that's my people. Well, if they are negative people, you might have to make a conscientious choice, an intentional choice that you don't spend so much time with them in the future. That's all your choice. But the things you hear, the things you read, the people you associate with, think about them. See, one thing's for sure. We need to take care of ourselves because we are no good to anyone else when we become sick or indeed pass away. See, the only way we can really have the best chance to protect ourselves is by making self-care a priority, making us immune to some of these things that are happening to us. Then we need to look after ourselves. And we're not talking about having to spend vast amounts of money on spa treatment, a personal fitness coach, maybe a psychiatrist or 2. But there are many ways, and we can take simple steps to improve our physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional health. And I certainly will talk into some of them in this talk. But there are people who now say, oh no, that's another thing that I have to deal with in an ever-growing a list of items that completely fill my day already. And maybe they're right. And maybe they're even sitting in your chair. And then after that, you put a 1 in the comments box so I know. But however, if that is you, and let me ask you a question. How many of those things that already fill your day do exactly that? They just fill your day and are totally non-productive. Now, When you look at all those things during the day, is it just possible that you could make some small changes and to start to squeeze some activities into your busy life and schedule that will be much more beneficial to your health? And if that's possible, again, put a 1 in the chat so I know where you're at. But now, I'm not saying you need to run on a treadmill for 2 hours a day, eat rabbit food for the rest of your life, or be in bed by 10 o'clock and get 8 to 10 solid hours of sleep. No, some of them might be wonderful to you, but I'm talking about maybe having 15 minutes less on your Facebook. Spend half an hour less on the electronic babysitter, the TV, and maybe get up half an hour earlier in the morning, one or all of the above. I mean, would that or any other way free up some time to spend on your self-care? Might that just be a possibility? Put a 1 in the chat if that might be an opportunity for you to do so. See, and I'm sure we all have a picture of what self-care actually looks like, but do we really know what it is? And firstly, contrary to some popular and unpopular belief, let me give you some things that self-care definitely is not. And it's not selfish, that's one thing for sure. It is not self-indulgent. It doesn't have to be expensive or luxurious. Yes, you can have a full spa treatment, you can lie on the beach in the Maldives and all those kind of things, but it's not necessary. And it's also not the same for everyone. One size doesn't fit all in this. And it's not something to feel guilty about. So what is self-care then? Well, self-care is about self-preservation. It's about self-love. It's about self-compassion. And my wife, Dr. Arthie Moore Roberts, speaks about compassion in The Compassionate Leader of Influence, and she is compassion personified. But it's also a necessity. It's got to be intentional. It's not nice to have, do someday and maybe tomorrow. No, you've got to be intentional about it. Because it's also nourishment for the body, mind, soul, and spirit, as well as your emotions. And it is also an act of giving yourself permission. And I love that. See, in short, self-care is anything that improves the quality of your health and therefore also the quality of your life. And I hope you agree with me on that. And if you do, put a 1 in the chat box. Now, if you've been traveling before on an airplane, you know that the instructions partly are about in case of a sudden drop in carbon pressure, masks will appear from the panels above your head. Pull one towards you and put it over your face put it over your own face before assisting others, including children. See, this is not selfish behavior because they recognize that you will be no good to anyone else if you don't survive. So here are some insights into a few possible areas to take care of yourself. And eating habits. Now, you are what you eat. You've heard that before, but what are your eating habits? Do you know? Do you ever read the labels of what kind of stuff is in many of these processed foods you eat? And about the excuses you make for why you eat fast food because you've got no time and all the other kind of things. Now, I don't say you can't eat fast food, but everything in moderation, of course. And it's not about rabbit food, leaving a juicy steak in the freezer and start eating a full plate of wonderful high protein crickets instead. No. But you need to think about it. I was bullied as a kid when I was under height and overweight. I mean, I was as wide as I was tall at the time. And I remember my granny used to say, she was a wonderful, pleasantly plump lady, a farming lady. And she said, happy people fat people are happy people. And I thought, well, not this one. Because I was miserable because I was getting bullied and name calling. But I mean, people are happy, and she was happy with who she was, and that was wonderful. But, what are your eating habits? And physical health, of course. You don't have to work out for hours a day. You don't need a gym membership. Because some of these people I used to meet at the gym, they exercised for 10 minutes and chatted for the next 2 hours, and they were in the gym for 2 hours. But it could be martial arts like I do, maybe a brisk walk a couple of times a week, whatever it takes. Sleeping, do you get enough sleep? Or more to the point, do you get enough quality sleep? And that also really depends on what the last things you do before you go to sleep. The things you hear, the things you read. If they are negative, then your quality of your sleep has been directly affected by what you read or what you listen to before you go to sleep. So read or listen to something positive before you go to sleep. It'll make a difference to the quality of your sleep. So eating, sleeping, and exercise are usually the main ones. But what about your attitude? My martial arts is about mind power and mind over matter. So all these kind of things. There is even hospital wards where they have only positivity, jokes, and comedy and beautiful colors. People there heal much quicker than in the other wards. It's been proven. And also, if you want to think about Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, that's a beautiful book to read about attitude. And I'm not going into it now, but he said, one of the things he strongly said is that there is one thing they cannot take away from you, is your freedom to choose, your own attitude. Go read that book. It's wonderful. Intentionality is also something, and I'm not talking about having good intentions, because we've all got them, of course. But it is about the difference between having good intentions and leading an intentional life is people with good intentions do something good occasionally. People who live an intentional life do something good continually. And that is the main thing. So these things are worth thinking into, as well as gratitude. Underestimated, but so important in your self-care. Be grateful. I wake up every morning and I say, I'm blessed and highly favored. It's the first thing that comes out of my mouth, because I am grateful. If you haven't started a gratitude journal, start one, because it will really help you, especially when you're down. You can then open up gratitude journal, look for the things that you're grateful for, and they already lift you up. And then there's one more thing I want to mention, and I say there's many more, but hope. Without hope, the people perish. And hope is something we just cannot do without. There is even things like dementia and Alzheimer's. They say part of the challenge there is that people who really accelerate this is people who've given up on life. They've given up hope on life. So it's powerful. But if we want to give hope to others, then we also need to be hopeful ourselves. Now, there's many more things like taking time out for what matters for you, thoughtfulness, inner peace, what you say to yourself, also very important. But self-care is certainly a personal matter. One size doesn't fit all, and it will always work differently for everybody, and that's why you need to choose your own self-care program. But it is, you need to do something that you love, because if you hate self-care, if you hate exercise, certain exercise, change it. It's not set in stone. So do something you love and do more of it. It's much more effective than forcing yourself to do some things that you eventually give up, like a New Year's resolution. Most of them give up in day 70. This year, day 17 of January was the day that it already fell away for most people. So it is about keep going. Now, it is also, there's 5 little pointers I want to give you that might really help you. The first one is have a serious and total honest talk with yourself about your health, and start finding out what you need to do more of. Maybe your attitude needs a checkup from the neck up. Maybe you need more maybe you need less screen time and more dream time. Whatever your biggest improvement can give, some of the habits that no longer serve you, but then write them down. Write down that areas that stand out for your personal self-care improvement, followed by create an action plan to address those needs, and if possible, involve your family with that, or some friends, and that also gives you accountability partners, so you can encourage each other as well. And then also watch what you say to yourself. The things you say to yourself on a daily basis, would you say them to your friends or your family or your spouse? And some might say, no, I don't talk to yourself. No, that voice that just told you that you don't talk to yourself. We all do it, but become more aware of them. And then, of course, the 5th one is take action on these items. Knowledge is not power, and it certainly won't make you any healthier. Knowledge acted upon. So start acting on those kind of things. So I want to leave you with some very simple question. It is not will you, but when will you create your own self-care plan? And please do not say tomorrow, because we all know what happens tomorrow. Not taking care of you should no longer be an option. And finally, for most people, it does not take a lot to get healthier. But this takes something. So stop being too busy to get healthy and start today.